I'm Cameron, and growing up, I lived in the shadow of my older sister Lily. She was like the shining star of our family. Our house was always buzzing with people, relatives, cousins, friends, who gathered in our backyard for my mom's famous barbecue and to watch Lily perform. The backyard felt like a stage. The neatly trimmed lawn and a big oak tree made the perfect backdrop. Dad manned the grill, filling the air with the mouth-watering aroma of sizzling meat, while Mom made sure everyone had a drink. "Lily, sweetie," Aunt Marge would call out, her voice cutting through the noise. "Sing us a song." Instantly, all eyes would turn to Lily. She'd hop onto a chair, her golden curls bouncing, with a playful sparkle in her eye. Clearing her throat dramatically, she'd belt out songs like "My Heart Will Go On" in her best Celine Dion impression. The crowd would go wild, clapping and cheering as if they were at a real concert. Mom and Dad watched proudly, Dad even wiping away a tear. Meanwhile, I'd stand off to the side, trying to disappear into the bushes. It's not that I didn't want to join in, but whenever I sang, it sounded like a strangled cat. And poetry? Forget it. The words would get stuck on my tongue, leaving me red-faced and stammering. Relatives whispered how different I was from Lily. But it wasn't just them. Even Mom and Dad made it clear who the star of the family was. Lily went from dance lessons to singing classes to art workshops, while I was left to my own devices. I didn't mind too much. I found my peace in the dusty old books lining our shelves. The one person who truly understood me was Great Aunt Maggie. She'd often find me hiding behind the garage or up in the treehouse, nose deep in a book. "What adventure are you on today, Cameron?" she'd ask, settling beside me. "Oh, just reading about ancient Egypt," I'd say, showing her the cover of my latest treasure. Maggie would nod, her eyes twinkling. "You've got a good head on your shoulders, girl. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Those moments with Maggie felt like a soothing balm for my soul. She didn't expect me to perform or be someone I wasn't. With her, I could just be Cameron, the quiet, bookish girl who loved the world of paper and ink more than the chaos of family gatherings. Still, it stung to feel forgotten. Every time Lily mastered a new song or won another award, Mom and Dad showered her with gifts, new clothes, fancy gadgets, the works. I got hand-me-downs and sighs of exasperation. School became my escape. I wasn't popular, but I found my place in the classroom. I worked hard to understand every lesson, often staying late to ask questions. "Mrs. Thompson," I'd say quietly after class, "can you explain mitosis again? I didn't quite get it." She'd smile, clearly pleased. "Of course, Cameron. Let's go over it together." If a teacher didn't have time, I'd ask for book recommendations. My backpack was always stuffed with extra reading material, and I'd stay up late devouring it all. By the time I reached high school, my hard work paid off. I was top of my class. For once, I was the best at something. I even made a few friends who shared my love for books and didn't mind my quiet nature. As graduation neared, the house revolved around Lily's future. Mom was constantly helping her prepare a portfolio for a fancy advertising program at college. "Oh, honey, this campaign is brilliant." Mom gushed over Lily's work. "You're so talented." I rolled my eyes and escaped to my room to focus on my studies. But one night, during another family dinner focused on Lily's college plans, I couldn't hold it in anymore. "I'm going to college too," I blurted out. "I want to study management." The room fell silent, and I braced myself for their reaction. Everyone burst out laughing. "Oh, sweetie," Mom said, wiping tears of laughter from her eyes. "We don't have money for that. You'll need to get a job after graduation. You're just not as gifted as your sister." It felt like a slap in the face. But I'm the top student in my class," I stammered, my face burning with anger and humiliation. "I get straight A's." I stormed up to my room, grabbed my report card, and slammed it down on the table in front of them. They leaned in, their expressions shifting from dismissive to surprised as they scanned the grades. "Well, I'll be damned," Dad muttered, scratching his head. "When did this happen?" "It's been happening for years," I snapped, anger spilling over. "Not that any of you ever noticed." Mom's face turned red with shame. "Cameron, we had no idea." Dad cut her off. "It doesn't change anything. We've spent all our savings on Lily's education. There's nothing left for you, Cameron. I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is." You'll work at my cousin Frank's restaurant after graduation. I didn't say another word. I turned and bolted up the stairs, ignoring their calls, slamming my door so hard the walls shook. Collapsing onto my bed, I let the tears flow, sobs racking my body. But as I cried, something shifted inside me. A steely determination replaced the pain. Fine, I thought, clenching my fists. If they won't help me, I'll find another way. I'll show them what Cameron can do. The next few months passed in a blur. Lily left for college, her departure marked by tearful goodbyes and my parents' proud embraces. Meanwhile, I threw myself into my studies, more determined than ever to graduate at the top of my class. During this time, I started spending more time with great Aunt Maggie. Her small, cozy house became my sanctuary. One afternoon, as we sat in her sunlit kitchen sipping tea, she asked the question I had been dreading. "So, Cameron," she began, her kind eyes studying me, "what are your plans after graduation?" I stared into my teacup, blinking back tears. I don't know, Aunt Maggie. Mom and Dad won't help me with college. They say there's no money left after paying for Lily's education. Aunt Maggie was quiet for a moment, then reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Cameron, dear," she said firmly, "I have some savings, and I want you to have them for college. You're too smart to let that go to waste. I'll be damned if I let your potential slip away." Her words hit me like a wave, overwhelming me with gratitude. Tears streamed down my face as I threw my arms around her. "Thank you, Aunt Maggie," I sobbed. "Thank you so much." Time flew by, and before I knew it, I was walking across the stage at graduation, diploma in hand. In the crowd, I spotted Aunt Maggie beaming with pride. My parents were there too, but their smiles were stiff and awkward. That evening, as I pored over college brochures, Mom came into my room. "Cameron, honey," she said, her voice overly sweet. "Your father's cousin Frank called. He has a nice waitressing job lined up for you at his restaurant. Isn't that exciting?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Actually, Mom, I won't be needing that job. I'm going to college." Dad appeared in the doorway, his brow furrowed. "And how exactly do you plan to pay for that?" "Aunt Maggie is helping me," I said, lifting my chin. "She's giving me her savings for tuition." The silence that followed was almost comical. Then Dad's face turned red with anger. "Absolutely not," he bellowed. "If Maggie has money to spare, it should go to Lily. She'll need a car for her advertising job after graduation next year." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Are you serious?" I snapped. "This is my chance to get an education, to build a future for myself." "Don't be selfish, Cameron," Mom said, her tone sharp. "Your sister needs that money more than you do." "No," I said firmly, my voice trembling but resolute. "This is my money now, and I'm using it for college. End of discussion." From that moment on, life at home became unbearable. My parents barely spoke to me, and when they did, it was only to criticize. The tension was suffocating. After a particularly heated argument, I called Aunt Maggie, tears streaming down my face, and told her everything. "Pack your bags, sweetheart," she said without hesitation. "Pack your bags, sweetheart," Aunt Maggie said without hesitation. "You're moving in with me." The very next day, I crammed everything I owned into a cab and drove away, watching my childhood home shrink in the rearview mirror. When I arrived at Aunt Maggie's house, it felt like a huge weight had lifted off my shoulders. The summer flew by as I prepared for the next chapter of my life. Before I knew it, I was stepping onto the campus of State University. Thanks to my top grades and Aunt Maggie's support, I had secured a spot in the management program I had always dreamed of. On my first day, I felt like I was walking on air. As I sat in my introduction to business lecture, soaking in every word, I couldn't stop thinking I made it. I'm really here. Meanwhile, Lily was starting her senior year at her prestigious college. I hadn't heard much from her or my parents since moving out, but I didn't let it bother me. I was too busy reveling in my newfound freedom and the excitement of college life. Then, about a month into the semester, Aunt Maggie called. "Cameron, dear," she began hesitantly, "I think you should sit down for this." My heart raced as she explained the latest family drama. Apparently, Lily had shown up at home unexpectedly and announced she had dropped out of college. The reason? She was pregnant. Aunt Maggie recounted the story with a mix of disbelief and concern. Lily had been flippant about the whole thing, saying, "Don't worry, the baby's father is loaded. We'll be getting married soon." But things weren't as simple as she thought. The boyfriend, upon learning Lily had also been involved with his friend, broke things off, leading to chaos. To make matters worse, they didn't even know who the father was initially. Aunt Maggie sighed heavily. "It's a mess, Cameron. A real mess." I sat there, the phone pressed to my ear, trying to process it all. Part of me felt a guilty satisfaction. The golden child had fallen from her pedestal. But mostly, I just felt sad for Lily and the situation she had gotten herself into. Over the next few months, Aunt Maggie kept me updated on the family gossip I was no longer privy to firsthand. When Lily's baby was born, a DNA test confirmed her boyfriend was the father. However, there was no fairy tale wedding. Instead, he agreed to pay child support, and that was it. The final blow came when Lily, desperate for work, took a waitressing job at Uncle Frank's restaurant. The same job my parents had tried to push onto me. When Aunt Maggie told me, I felt a swirl of emotions. A small, petty part of me wanted to gloat, to rub my success in their faces. But mostly, I felt a deep sense of gratitude for Aunt Maggie for my hard work and for the distance I had managed to put between myself and all the drama. 4 years flew by in a blur of lectures, exams, and late-night study sessions. Before I knew it, I was walking across the stage at my graduation ceremony, my hard-earned management degree clutched tightly in my hand. As I scanned the crowd, I saw Aunt Maggie sitting front and center, her face beaming with pride and tears in her eyes. My parents were there too, looking proud but uncomfortable. Thanks to my top grades and glowing recommendations, I had landed a dream job as a manager at the Gilded Fork, one of the city's most prestigious restaurants. The salary was more than I had ever imagined, and for the first time in my life, I felt genuinely successful. With my first paycheck, I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I marched into an electronics store and bought the latest smartphone for Aunt Maggie. When I handed it to her, her face lit up. "Oh, Cameron," she gasped, turning the sleek device over in her hands. "This is too much." I grinned. "Not at all. Now let me show you how to use it." Over the next few weeks, I taught her everything about social media. She quickly became a pro, especially loving Facebook's video feature. Soon, her page was filled with clips of her garden, her cat, and her famous apple pie in various stages of creation. At work, I'd watch her videos during lunch, always making sure to leave a comment or a like. It was our way of staying connected, even when life got busy. One day, while preparing for the dinner rush, my phone buzzed. To my surprise, it was my mother calling. We hadn't spoken in years. "Cameron," her voice was hesitant, "we were hoping you might come over to talk." After a long pause, I agreed. That Sunday, I found myself standing on the porch of my childhood home, hand trembling as I reached for the doorbell. I hesitated, my finger hovering over the doorbell. Before I could press it, the door swung open. "Cameron," my mother exclaimed, pulling me into a tight hug. "Oh, sweetie, it's so good to see you." Inside, I found my father, Lily, and a toddler I assumed was my niece. The atmosphere was tense, but not as hostile as I had feared. "You look good, kiddo," Dad said gruffly, though there was warmth in his voice. "We hear you're doing well for yourself." "I am," I replied cautiously. "I'm a manager at the Gilded Fork now." Their eyes widened at the mention of the restaurant's name. Mom cleared her throat. That's wonderful, dear. Actually, that's part of why we wanted to talk to you." Over the next hour, they apologized for how they had treated me, admitting they had been wrong to dismiss my potential. Then came the real reason for the reunion. "Cameron," Mom began, glancing nervously at Lily, we were wondering if you might help Lily get a job at your restaurant." I looked over at Lily, who was bouncing her daughter on her knee. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "I'll see what I can do," I said after a moment. "No promises, but I'll ask." True to my word, I spoke to Mr. Reeves, the restaurant's owner, about Lily. To my surprise, he agreed to give her a shot as an administrator. Lily started the following week. At first, I watched her closely, half expecting her to fail or stir up drama. But to my shock, she excelled. She was punctual, efficient, and her charm won over both the staff and the customers. Over time, I found myself relaxing around her. We weren't best friends by any means, but we developed a cordial working relationship. Just as I thought life had settled, the universe threw me another curveball, this time a positive one. One day, Mr. Reeves called me into his office. My heart raced, wondering if I'd done something wrong. Instead, he grinned and said, "Cameron, how would you like to help me expand the business?" Before I knew it, I was overseeing the opening of not one, but 3 new restaurants. My days became a whirlwind of staff meetings, menu tastings, and budget planning. It was exhausting, exhilarating, and everything I had ever dreamed of. The promotion came with a significant pay raise, and suddenly I had more money than I knew what to do with. That's when the calls from my parents began. At first, it was small things. "The roof is leaking," Mom said hesitantly one evening. "We were wondering if you could help out a little." To my surprise, it felt good to say yes, to solve their problems with a simple transfer of funds. What started with the roof led to a new water heater, and soon I was funding a complete home renovation. As their financial situation improved, the infamous family parties returned. But this time, things were different. "Have you heard about Cameron's latest project?" Mom would gush to relatives. "She's opening a new restaurant downtown. We're so proud of her." I'd catch Lily's eye across the room, and she'd give me a small smile. She was doing well, too, having been promoted to head administrator at the Gilded Fork. "My girls," Dad would say, draping an arm around each of us. Both of them making their old man proud. Part of me wanted to hold on to my bitterness, to remind them of how they had treated me before. But a larger part of me soaked in their approval, something I had craved for so long. As I drove home that night, a sense of contentment washed over me. Finally, after all these years, I had what I had always wanted: success in my career and the love and appreciation of my family. I was the golden child now. But more importantly, I was my own woman, standing tall on my own 2 feet. Then one lazy Sunday afternoon, everything came crashing down. I was scrolling through Facebook, sipping my coffee, when I saw Aunt Maggie had posted a new video. It was from one of the family gatherings I had missed due to work. Smiling, I clicked play, expecting to see the usual scenes of laughter and celebration. Instead, what I saw made my blood run cold. In the video, my parents were visibly drunk, their faces flushed and animated. My mother was waving her arms wildly, her voice slurred but unmistakable. "And Cameron," she sneered, her tone full of venom. "That ungrateful little freeloader," my mother's slurred voice hissed through the video. "She barely gives us anything. We're not made of money, you know." My dad's face was red as he chimed in. "That's right. We're doing just fine thanks to Lily. She's the one keeping that fancy restaurant afloat. Cameron just rides on her coattails." The camera panned to various relatives nodding along, some even adding their own snide remarks. In the corner, Lily sat uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact but saying nothing to contradict them. As the video ended, I sat frozen, staring at the screen in disbelief. My chest felt tight, and my hands trembled. How could they? After everything I had done for them, all the money I had given them, how could they turn around and say such cruel, untrue things? With shaking hands, I scrolled to the comments. My parents had clearly seen the video and were furious. "Maggie, delete this video right now," one comment from Mom read. "You had no right to post this. Take it down immediately." But Aunt Maggie's response brought tears to my eyes. "I don't know how to delete videos," she replied. "And even if I did, I wouldn't. It's time everyone saw the truth about how you treat Cameron. She's the one supporting you, and this is how you repay her kindness. Shame on you both." I stared at the screen for what felt like hours, replaying the video and rereading the comments. The betrayal cut deep, reopening wounds I thought had healed long ago. Finally, I picked up my phone and dialed Aunt Maggie. "Oh, Cameron, dear," she answered, her voice filled with sympathy. "I take it you've seen the video." "Yeah," I croaked, my throat raw from crying. "I can't believe it, Aunt Maggie. How could they?" "They've always been like this, Cameron," she said, anger lacing her words. "You just haven't been around to see it. I'm sorry you had to find out this way, but maybe it's for the best. You deserve to know the truth." We talked for hours, Aunt Maggie comforting me as I cycled through shock, anger, and heartbreak. As the night fell, I made a decision. "I'm cutting them off," I said, my voice firm despite the ache in my chest. "No more money, no more help. They made their bed. Now they can lie in it. The days after the video were some of the hardest of my life. My phone buzzed constantly with calls and messages from my parents, but I couldn't bring myself to answer. Their cruel words replayed in my mind like a broken record. Finally, after a week of silence, I sent them a brief, direct text. "I've seen the video. I know what you really think of me. Don't contact me again. The money stops now." Their responses came flooding in almost immediately. At first, they were apologetic. "Cameron, sweetie, we're so sorry. We didn't mean any of it. Please forgive us." But when I maintained my silence, their tone shifted. "We're your parents. You owe us." Each message twisted the knife deeper, but I stood my ground. I had given them chance after chance, and they had thrown it all away. It was time to break the cycle. Lily, to my surprise, stayed out of it entirely. At work, she remained the model employee, efficient, professional, and focused. If she felt any resentment over losing our parents' financial support, she didn't show it. "I'm not taking sides," she told me one day after a staff meeting. "This is between you and them." I nodded, appreciating her neutrality, even if a part of me wished she'd stand up for me. But I understood. She had her own child to think of. As the weeks turned into months, I leaned heavily on Aunt Maggie. Our weekly Sunday video calls became my sanctuary. She'd tell me stories about her garden or her latest baking adventure. Her warmth and humor a much-needed balm for my wounded heart. "You're doing the right thing, Cameron," she assured me whenever doubts crept in. "Don't let them manipulate you anymore." To my surprise, other relatives began reaching out as well. Cousin Sarah, who had always been kind at family gatherings, sent me an email. "I saw the video. I just want you to know I think you're amazing, Cameron. What you've achieved, how you've helped everyone. You're an inspiration. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Uncle Bob, Dad's brother, called out of the blue. "Kid, I've watched you grow up into this incredible woman. Your parents are fools if they can't see how special you are. You've got family in your corner. Don't forget that." These messages of support were like a soothing balm. I realized that while I had lost my parents, I had gained a family who appreciated me for who I truly was. As the year drew to a close, Mr. Reeves called me into his office. My stomach churned, wondering if the family drama had somehow affected my work. Instead, he smiled broadly and said, "Cameron, I'm retiring next year. I want you to take over as CEO of the restaurant group." I stared at him, speechless. Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything," he replied, his eyes twinkling. "You've earned this, Cameron. You're the reason this business has flourished. It's time for you to take the reins." As I left his office, my mind raced with possibilities. Then, a profound realization washed over me. The little girl who had been overlooked and underestimated had grown into a woman who had surpassed everyone's expectations, including her own.